Mining with mercury. How the hunt for gold in Suriname is making some rich and others sick.
And that the children could eventually lose the use of their arms and legs and suffer from severe kidney damage.
How the Suriname government plans to balance economic development with its responsibility to the environment.
As the price of gold goes up, it becomes harder and harder for a government to say no.
The government specifically instructed us to try to fix it, modernize it, and get them to produce more.
On this episode of 18 Degrees North.
"18 Degrees North" is brought to you by
Grace.
Grace Coconut Water presents A Few Seconds with the world's fastest woman.
When you step into the blocks, you've got to believe in yourself, be yourself, and always be good to yourself.
Life is fast. Hydrate well with Grace Coconut Water.
I love Gen Money Transfer.
Yo, love my JN Money Transfer card.
I love the way they understand me. I just love how the money reach real fast.
I love that it's my connection to home.
I love that it is so very convenient.
I love the way they help me say I love you.
I'm my thing this.
It's a love thing.
Grace Coconut Water presents Quality Time with the world's fastest woman.
My life is fast. Even when I'm not on the track, I'm busy running around. I always take the time to refresh.
Life is fast. Hydrate well with Grace Coconut Water.
Hello, I'm Zara Burton and welcome to 18 Degrees North. It's from right here in Kingston, Jamaica, where every week we're going to be taking you on a global journey with us as we bring you a newer perspective on Caribbean affairs. And we begin tonight with a special on mining in the Caribbean. Jamaica is known for bauxite, Trinidad and Tobago, oil and gas, and more countries to the south, like Guyana and Suriname, they're known for gold. Gold's made a lot of people rich in these two CARICOM nations, especially when it hit a record $1,900 plus back in 2011. Since then, even though prices have tumbled significantly, miners are still actively searching for gold. But what it takes to get that gold out of the ground could be causing irreversible damage to the environment. In our special tonight, Dan Rather Reports on Access TV contributed this piece on mining in Suriname. He shows how mercury use there is not just an issue for Suriname, but for the world over. Let's head now to the jungles of Suriname at 4 degrees north and 56 degrees west.
Welcome to Suriname. Lying on the northern coast of South America, little has changed here for generations of indigenous people living deep in the jungle interior. Not on the A list of tourist destinations, it has long been one of the poorest countries in the world. But in the modern bustling population centers along the coast, the mood and the country's bottom line are improving. This is the capital city, Paramaribo. This former Dutch colony has an old colonial feel. The streets are crowded and the markets are jammed. New wealth is everywhere, and so is gold. Per capita income has doubled in recent years, due largely to Suriname's new leading export. In 2000, about 600 pounds of gold was exported.
1277.
Last year, that number was 66,000 pounds.
Coming to my office.
And the government man keeping an eye on all that glittering gold is Gerald Dompeg.
You need a license to do mining, period. If it's a large scale, small scale, mid scale, you need a license. But about 90% of the small-scale miners don't have a license. They don't have a permit.
But licensing miners is just one of his problems. You see, there's another metal that's popular around Paramaribo. It's not glittering in storefront windows, but if you quietly ask the right person, you can find an almost unlimited supply, and that is mercury.
Officially, it's not against the law yet to use it, but it's illegal to import it. So it comes here by smuggling.
You won't see mercury advertised, but it didn't take us long before someone agreed to show us their supply if we didn't reveal their identity. Mercury is the only metal that is a liquid at room temperature, and in many parts of the world, it's a key ingredient in extracting gold. It's also highly lethal, especially in children. The most famous case of mercury poisoning occurred in Minamata, Japan in the 1950s and 60s when thousands of people were sickened or died from mercury-laced industrial runoff.
Mercury is most damaging to fetuses and to young children because it affects the developing brain.
Did you see my email about the TRI?
Susan Keene is an environmental analyst at the Natural Resources Defense Council in Washington. And she's helping to write a United Nations treaty that will reduce mercury use in gold mining. She has spent years visiting mine sites around the globe, trying to tackle what she says is a worldwide problem.
Mercury is a very toxic chemical and is found globally, especially in fish stocks throughout the world. And it's a global pollutant, which means mercury emitted in one country can travel across borders and contaminate another country.
And that's why Suriname government official Gerald Dampeg knows he's got to get the mercury in his country under control quickly.
You need about 1 kilo of mercury to extract 1 kilo of gold. So if we give all these small-scale miners who extracted last year 17,000 kilos of gold, they have injected the environment with 17,000 kilos of mercury.
Images taken from a plane flying overhead show the pockmarked landscape of countless gold mines. Most of them are accessible only by riverboat and four-wheel drive vehicles. After hacking through trees and bumping along muddy trails for an hour to get to one, we heard a sound you don't expect to hear in the rainforest. The loud roar of heavy equipment. And then we saw it, what's called a small-scale gold mine. Small-scale mines account for 10 to 15% of the world's gold supply, but here's what's shocking. Susan Keene says a new United Nations report finds that small-scale mining has a new and ominous distinction. It is now the single largest source of mercury pollution on the planet.
In the past, and it's quite well known that coal-fired power plants and other coal combustion contribute a lot of mercury to the environment, especially to the air. But the most recent estimates show that artisanal small-scale gold mining have overtaken coal combustion as the biggest source.
Back in the jungles of Suriname, the miners show us how they use mercury, freely and openly adding it to almost every step of the process. To get the gold, they pump mud and water through troughs lined with mercury. The mercury naturally binds to the gold, causing it to sink to the bottom, where it is trapped on mesh mats. Much of the mercury in the water runs off into nearby streams and rivers. Larenton Ketzer runs his family's mining operation deep in the jungle of central Suriname. He comes from a family of gold miners in neighboring Brazil.
Rapaz, com ouro já está trabalhando mais ou menos uns 9, 10 anos. E no Suriname uns 10 anos mais ou menos.
Ketzer is typical of miners we met in Suriname. They seem vaguely aware that mercury is toxic and yet unconcerned about the potential mercury runoff from their sites.
Eu pensava no possível passar, sabe? O sistema nós trabalhar, ele não passa na água.
Ketzer does try to recover some of the mercury from his mining operation, but there's little doubt that some ends up in the country's complex water systems. And for many miners, it doesn't stop there. Once the mercury-gold mix is collected from the equipment, it's heated to burn off the mercury. It's what you don't see in the air that has scientists worried.
The mercury is burned off and it becomes vapor, and that is how you get rid of the mercury and you have gold left over. That mercury is released into the environment.
What goes up must come down. Mercury released to the air eventually falls back to the earth in rain. Every mine we visited in Suriname was using mercury. Now imagine this process happening every day at thousands of similar mines here and all around the globe.
We think around 70 countries around the world are engaged in small-scale gold mining. About 10 to 20 million people, which includes women and children who are involved in the practice.
Stay with us. We'll be rejoining Dan Rather Reports in Suriname for part 2 of our special report on gold in the Caribbean. See firsthand the human toll of using mercury in mining. That's next on 18 Degrees North.
The preceding segment was brought to you by
Grace.
Tropical rhythms for the fun of life.
First Global Bank presents Rewards Your Way, the Visa Credit Cards rewards program that gets you the stuff you really want. Of course there's travel and hotel, but there's also merchandise from our vendor partners, name brand appliances and accessories, hardware and tools, designer furniture, access to amazing local attractions and even groceries. First Global Rewards Your Way makes the impossible possible with the best Visa rewards program and the lowest interest rates in Jamaica. What are you waiting for? Upgrade your card to FGB Visa today.
Exercise. You know him coming to line up alone. Bring in the Grace Frankfurters. Quick.
The race, start.
These events now. Reach.
There they go. Good start. Oh, Sturgis up very, very well. Shelly Fraser Price has the lead. Simone Payne is on pace, but
How are you, Bart?
Grace Frankfurters, Jamaica's favorite Frankfurters. Everybody is family.